Thank you. So thank you for listening to this episode of the Mental Insights podcast. We have Lorraine here for a wonderful conversation to speak more about how trauma, how substances can cause harm, and the really inspiration and motivation that you will receive from Lorraine of how and where she is today. So Lorraine, why don't you just introduce yourself and give us a little glimpse about what you're doing today?
So my name is Lorraine Reguly, and I am, so many things. Where to begin? First of all, I'm a certified English teacher. Secondly, I run a business called Wording Well, which is all based around words, writing, editing, helping people become authors. I am an author myself as well, and I do some coaching if people like that sort of thing. I will certainly help them do that. Yeah, it's amazing where I'm at now, because I'm actually, like, words are my passion, and I'm actually working with words, doing things that I love to do. And it's not, it's like so different from where my life used to be. And I guess we'll talk more about that. Where should I start, Brendan?
Yeah, no, definitely. I'm so glad that you spoke about a lot of the topics that you focus on now. And, I think that'll be a good transition. Let's start from what you experienced, and then let's go towards, the profound work that you're doing today within words, within writing, within all of these different avenues of the way that you can share your story, but as well share the skills that you have within sharing your story. At first, let's talk about, what did you face as a kid, but obviously what did you have to share about before that?
Okay, so a lot of the work that I'm doing now is in the self-help industry because of the book that I wrote called From Note to Hope. It's a book, the subtitle of it is From Note to Hope, How I Overcame My Suicidal Thoughts and How You Can Too. Because for a lot of my life, I had suicidal thoughts. And it's because of the trauma that I experienced as a teenager. When I was 14, I was a virgin still back then, and I was raped. And this happened during a period where things weren't really openly discussed in society like they are today. And so I didn't feel as though I had anyone to talk to tell about what happened to me. And so I didn't know how to cope. And I mean, at 14, you're still a child, and you're still developing things, and you're still trying to, figure out everything about this, what could be a big scary world that we live in. And I didn't know how to cope with what happened to me. And so I did the things at the time that I knew what to do. And that was eating, trying to make myself feel better through eating, sleeping, trying to numb those negative emotions by, I started doing drugs, I started drinking. I fell into a really, really deep depression. And at 15, I tried to kill myself. It was really hard. Like, I didn't tell anybody what happened to me for years. And actually it was 8 years after the fact. And during those 8 years, I was still in high school. Because all this happened right at the end of my very first year of high school, at the end of grade 9. And so I started back in September going to school, and I just couldn't function properly anymore. I mean, I was so depressed and so I felt so horrible. I mean, if we want to talk about the feelings, like, I was raised as a Catholic, and so in the Catholic religion, you're taught to save your virginity till you're married. And so I felt as though I was dirty and damaged, damaged goods. I figured like no one's going to love me now. No one's going to want to be with me because I was sullied and tarnished, and I felt, I felt ugly and disgusting, and I felt hopeless, and I felt worthless, and all of these like really horrible feelings like all of the time. And so obviously I tried to numb those feelings by, like I said, eating, sleeping, drugs, drinking, doing anything I could to alter that reality that I was in my head. And eventually I became promiscuous. I was going out with my cousin, my older cousin. I'd always looked older, so I was able to get into bars, and I went out with her, and we'd go out drinking and partying, and I started looking for love in all the wrong places, having one night stands with guys and thinking, oh well, if I give them sex, that means they're going to love me. And just, my whole thinking back then was so twisted because, like I said, I didn't have anyone to turn to, so I didn't have anyone to teach me how to cope with what was going on. And it was a really awful period of my life, because it just, the one traumatic event ended up turning into like so many other events that I just didn't know how to deal with. And, they were all just negative. It was like my life was on a downward negative spiral and spiraling out of control. And I just had no idea what to do. I mean, at 16, I found out I was pregnant, and the father was an alcoholic. And so I also wasn't ready to have a kid at that age, and so I ended up having an abortion. Um, at 17, I found out I was pregnant again, and this time I decided to keep the baby, and so at 18, I became a single mom. And that was one of the positive experiences of my life, because me having a child and wanting the best for my child, I realized like, okay, well, I have to go back to school and I have to get an education because I want the best for my child. And the only way that I'm going to be able to do that is if I better myself. And so I ended up going back to school. I actually found a program for single moms who who are like high school dropouts, and they wanted to complete their high school education. And so there was a place in my city called the Adult Education Center, and I was able to spend the next 4 years from 18 to 22 in that program, completing all of my high school credits through they call it correspondence books. Like they would give you lessons to read and then the assignment to do. And generally that type of thing, the work used to get mailed off to the teacher, but because I was in a special program and I actually attended the facility, the Adult Education Center, the teachers just marked it there. So it was structured in a really unique way, where in the afternoons I would go in the afternoons only, and they had babysitting services provided on site, so that I was able to actually bring my son with me. And it was really cool. It was a good program, and I was able to complete my high school education through that. And I got a bunch of scholarships and certificates and medals and all this kind of thing. So I was able to get into the university program of my choice to study to become a high school teacher. And so that's what I did. I went to university for 5 years after that, and subsequently graduated with a Bachelor of Arts and a Bachelor of Education, and the certification to teach math and English at the high school level in the province of Ontario in Canada, which is where I am from and where I still live, actually. So that was really good, and I ended up, getting a job right out of university. I was very fortunate. I had to move to a little small town to get it, but it wasn't too bad. It was 4 hours away from the city I grew up in. So I moved my son and I, and that's what we did. And for 3.5 years, I taught high school math and English. And due to other events that went on in my life, I ended up quitting that job and moving back to my hometown. Now, there's one thing that I didn't mention throughout the earlier years is when I said I became promiscuous. Yes, that was part of it. But I also ended up involved in prostitution because my views of, like I said, my mind was, twisted. My belief system was shattered. And so I didn't know how to think rationally and properly as a teenager. And when my thinking at that point was, okay, I had been looking for love in the wrong places with these guys, and then eventually I was like, okay, well, instead of giving it away for free, I should just get paid for it, because it meant nothing to me. Like, sex meant nothing to me. And so that ended up causing like further, I guess you could say, damage to my psyche because of all the negative stereotypes and negative connotations that went along with that quote unquote job, which is exactly how I viewed it. Was a job. It was just like, okay, here's a way to make money. And I was involved with that for several years. And in fact, when I quit teaching and I moved back home to Thunder Bay, I ended up getting back involved in prostitution again, because like I said, it was a way to make money and make ends meet. And, and that's, we talk about the different effects of trauma. And that was one of the after effects of my trauma, was the distortion in my thinking and in my belief system regarding sex and love. And that was huge for me. I mean, even now, I catch myself, when these kinds of issues come up, and it's like, wow, it's amazing that these emotions behind them, they can still affect you, and they will affect you for the rest of your life. The thing is, now I have learned different strategies and techniques to deal with these kinds of things when they crop up. And I've learned to identify when something is happening to me. I can, instead of being all in my head about it, I can actually recognize the thought patterns and the different, triggers that happen in my life. And I'm able to take a step back and say, okay, look, Lorraine, you have to look at what's going on in your life. This is not just you feeling whatever. You need to, analyze the situation, and then therefore figure out the best way to deal with it so that you can get over it, face it, get over it, and move on, and continue to, continue on your positive path. And so From Nope to Hope is my book that I share all of those strategies and techniques that I learned, on my own, and also through years of therapy, because I did eventually, talk about what happened to me, and I got counseling. And I know that, I think that was like one of your questions that you wanted to ask me, right? So, yeah, I'm losing my train of thought here. So I'll just stop for a minute and take a breath.
Definitely, please do. Yeah, I thank you for sharing that story, first of all. It was definitely great to hear about the triumphs and the failures. There's so much that happens throughout the course, and it's very interesting to see that not only did you face one challenge, but you faced multiple challenges just when you were 14 years old. When you're 14, you're going through not only just the brain development, the body development. You have a lot of different instances when you're a teenager that you're facing. So there's one. The next one is you're facing a traumatic experience that when it happens in childhood, you don't necessarily have the resources, the support to go through. And I mean, in and of itself, you were in a time period as well that you couldn't reach out. Therapy wasn't something that was at an easy disposal for you to just reach out. It wasn't a conversation, whether it was a traumatic experience such as, a mental health challenge or a rape. That wasn't a topic of conversation that was something so quick that you could say, all right, I know the resources that I can reach out to. For you, you were a young adult, a young woman that faced something that no one should ever have to, and you have no resources. You're all alone. You don't have anybody to reach out to, and you're thrown into a society that really won't accept it in and of itself.
Yeah, like even the kids helpline wasn't even created until I think it was 1988, and all of this happened to me in 1985. 85, 86, yeah, 85. So it was, there was no resources available that I knew of. Like, you didn't see advertising anywhere on TV or billboards or, on city transportation like you do now, like where they have, need help, call this number. I mean, hell, the internet wasn't even invented back then. So, I mean, you have to think back, like this is the mid 1980s where, there was nothing and nobody was discussing anything. I mean, people, even like the LGBTQ community was not even really discussed back then. Because I can remember, like when I was 18, I had one friend who came out to me, and he had no idea like what to do to get support or anything, and so I was the only person for a whole year who knew, and it was because of me. Like he ended up eventually telling other people because he had me to support him, and like we were best friends. So it was, yeah, I mean, there was nothing, no kind of support or anything back then. And now it's really wonderful because we have the internet, we have phone lines, we have chat rooms, we have social media. We have no excuse now for not reaching out to somebody because there's so many ways that we can reach out. And even if it's just a text message, I mean, like there was no cell phones back then. There was like literally nothing. And now it's really wonderful because you have so many people connecting on social media. And, I mean, there is pros and cons to the technology available nowadays, of course, but there are definitely more pros because it does allow people to reach out and seek whatever information that they're looking for, whether it's, I mean, any question. Like you have Siri and you've got your Google Assistant, you've got everything. And it's just like, okay, what's the answer to this? Tell me now. And it's like instant results. And so people who are now facing trauma or, problems in their life or whatever kind of issue that they have, there's a solution out there, and it's literally at the tip of your fingers. So there's no excuse for having to remain stuck in a situation that you don't like.
Definitely. And it's such a different perspective because you look at someone like yourself when back then there was not one resource. There was only someone firsthand that you had to walk up to. And not only is, that even a big differentiation too, because you have one hand when back in your time you had to walk up to someone and say, all right, this is what I faced. This is what I struggled with. First of all, am I accepted? How can you accept me and try to help me through this? Where now you can reach out over, a text message and online media where it's easier for someone to really speak out. Can you share what kind of really comfortability, how you have to feel safe within inside yourself in order to, share such a traumatic experience with someone else. Because making that first step, I believe, is such a hard one. You said it took you 8 years. So,
Mm-hmm.
for someone that is out there and that has faced a traumatic experience, you obviously faced a incredible challenge when there was no resources. But for someone today, what can bring them over that line to say, maybe a conversation with a friend or a therapist or just a helpline will bring me over and really see that I need the help that can benefit my life, and that I'm not alone. I don't have, no one to help me, and that my life is worthless.
Right. So that's a really good point that you make about, reaching out through text or social media, because the comfort level when you deep inside, you need some kind of help and you don't know what to do and you don't know who to turn to. And like that, like you said, back in my day, you actually had to physically go and talk to somebody. And that's super terrifying for people. Like, nobody wants to admit any kind of anything to other people. I mean, heck, we don't even want to admit when we're wrong. We have a hard time saying sorry to someone. So imagine revealing like this huge, massive secret that's destroying you inside. Like, how do you just bring that up in conversation? Like, it's so literally impossible to do because you don't have the courage. You don't have, there's so many factors that come into play. So with social media, you have that buffer there. You can hide behind your screen. You don't have to face literally somebody face to face. You can just text a random stranger in a chat room or an online, help group. There's so many different places. I know there's like places like betterhelp.com, where you can just type in a little chat box and they say, okay, how can we help you? We can connect you with a counselor. There's so many different types of resources like that available. There's phone numbers that you can call. There's groups you can join in Facebook. There's, you can even just throw up a question on Twitter saying, asking for a friend who was raped. Who can she turn to? And right there, you're like, removing yourself from the equation by saying asking for a friend. Because honestly, take a look at the hashtag Me Too movement. There's so many survivors out there. So, asking for a friend, even phrasing it that way, is perfectly acceptable. And people will still respond. So like, there's so many ways that you can reach out now. I'm just, like, even doing a simple Google search, and that's the reason why I wrote my book, Brendan, is because I wrote a story, my true story about my experience with suicide. And I put it up on my website. And it's called, I Want to Kill Myself. What do I do? Because when people are feeling that horrible and that alone, and they are trying to, they do recognize that they need help, but they don't know where to look, they turn to Google. I mean, Google is our best friend these days. It knows everything. And when you type in whatever search phrase you're looking for, whether it's kill myself or I want to kill myself or anything about that, I wrote this story and it ended up ranking on the first page of Google, because not only did I talk about my experience, and why I did it, and how I did it and everything else, but I also offered tips on what to do if you're feeling that way. Because now, being a blogger, being online, I'm very helpful, and I give a lot of information out for free to people. And so all of these tips that I provided in that same article, that talks about my experience with suicide, people started reading that. And like, I at one point had over 500 people a day coming to read this, and I was just flabbergasted that there were so many people out there that were feeling the exact same way as I was at one point, and so when I saw that, I was like, oh my goodness, there's so much more in me that I have to share with people. Like there's so much I have learned that, I mean, you can only fit so much in a blog post on the internet. And so that's why, I ended up writing my book. And like, you can see, like, there's a lot of, like, this would not fit in a blog post on the internet. So yeah, from Nope to Hope. And it actually contains a built-in workbook. So at the end of each chapter, I have like a little section where people can actually write in. And this is available in digital form too, where people can like literally type inside of it to answer questions and write down their next steps, or, review what they just like learned and apply it to their own life, to really make it more effective and more applicable to everyone. Because the tips that I share in there, there's strategies that I use, there's techniques that I've used to just be a more happier person, to overcome depression, to overcome any kind of negativity in your life, and just focus on being positive and being happier and healthier and making better choices, and all the good stuff that everybody wants, right? So and one of the things that I truly encourage people to do is to reach out and talk to other people, because that's where the healing begins, is once you face what's going on and you admit it. I mean, it's almost the same. It's like, you hear this about Alcoholics Anonymous or, Narcotics Anonymous. The first thing to do is admit you have a problem and, get out of that denial. And so as soon as you're ready to admit, like, hey, yes, there's a problem in my life. And, it could be big, it could be small, it could be huge, like a huge trauma. It could be something minor that you're just not happy with. Whatever it is, you can just say, hey, oh, you know what? There's something in my life I want to change. And I think I'm ready to change it. So how do I start changing it? And by admitting that there is a problem and accepting that, yes, you know what? I would love to change it. That shows tremendous strength. The amount of courage and strength that alone shows is just phenomenal. And so if you're, whoever's listening right now, and if you're, some of this is, you're thinking like, oh yeah, you know what, I do have this like small little problem that I need to fix, or, whatever kind of issue that you want to change in your life, just admitting that to yourself is like the biggest step that you'll ever take, because that it just shows right there that you have the strength and the courage and the desire to improve your life. And once you start taking those little steps, it's amazing how much better you'll feel afterwards, because you're letting the healing process begin. And this is what I'm so passionate about now, with helping other people, and sharing things that I've learned. I mean, and sharing stuff for free even. Like, yes, I'm talking about my book, but, there's so much free stuff that I've put up on my website. One of the what I like to call is my little secret to happiness is using positive affirmations to change my mindset and to keep my mind focused on like how I want to feel and where I want to go with my life moving forward. And because we're always, no matter how much we succeed, no matter how many accomplishments we have behind us, we're still always, works in progress, and we're always moving forward, because there's always something else that we want to do. There's always something, bigger and better, or just, something else that we want to accomplish. And so one of the things that I love to use, one of the techniques or strategies, is using positive affirmations to improve your life. And in fact, it's a whole chapter of my book that I have made free on my business site. And it's called How to Use Positive Affirmations to Improve Your Life. It's on wordingwell.com. And the whole thing is available right there for free. You can copy it. There's the worksheets up there, the blog post. You can even download it. It's all completely free, because I never learned about positive affirmations until Probably, let's see, about 6 years ago. Yeah, about 5 or 6 years ago. And so I thought that this was like some big secret that was kept from me. And it's been the single most effective way of changing my mindset and remaining happier on a daily basis. And it works the fastest. And that's why I love it compared to like other strategies out there that, sometimes take, a couple of weeks or a couple of months to see results, right? But this one, I mean, within like a week, like you'll start seeing results. You'll start seeing changes in your thoughts. And for me, I mean, I'm the type of person where, if something gets into my mind, it'll stay there and it'll just like, especially if it's negative, it'll just stay there and it'll fester and it'll just like pick at my mind, pick at everything I'm doing. And no matter what task I'm doing throughout the day, no matter who I'm talking to, no matter what I'm doing, it's always in the back, just picking and picking and picking. It's like slowly eating away at me and consuming me. And then, before you know it, like you're back into this hole or this rut or whatever, and you don't know how to get out of it. But by using positive affirmations at the beginning of every day, like within moments of waking up, you just set your mind right, you set it straight, you tell yourself all of these wonderful things, and they could be true, they could be not true, and that's the whole point, is even if they're not true, you still tell them to yourself. And that's the cool part of the human brain, is because your subconscious, once these affirmations sink into your subconscious accepts them as truths. And it will fight to make your inner reality match your outer reality. And before you know it, you're going to start seeing like really incredible, it almost like miracles in your life. Things that you never ever thought possible will actually be possible. They will come true. It's like, it's I don't know, I just love positive affirmations so much because they're so powerful and so incredible. And I mean, had I known about these things like back when I was like 14 and raped, holy smokes, my life would have turned out completely differently, like way better, and way better, way faster. Because now that I know about these things, things are going really well for me. But I mean, I had to go through like 30 years of hell to, before I even learned about these. So that's one of the things that I really like to, to advocate to people, is to start using something like, take that first little step. Just do anything that you can to move yourself in the right direction. Because like, we know when we're going through stuff, and it's not like, this is gonna end your problems forever, but it's gonna make your problems so much easier to deal with. It's gonna help you find solutions, and it's gonna eventually eliminate them and give you the happiness and the life that you're looking to lead. And so that's why I think just these are so wonderful.
That's so great. Thank you for sharing that. You spoke about a lot of valuable things, about a lot of valuable tips that I think the audience can gain from. And, first and foremost, I think the asking for a friend is a great tip in terms of, reaching out and letting people know and asking for that help is a great step. As well, you spoke a little bit about, once you really portray the experience that you had with someone else, the weight that gets lifted off of your shoulder once you share that experience is, it's indescribable, because it's such a different feeling once you actually have someone else understand a little glimpse into what you were able to experience, because just that acceptance offers such a connection between two people, that you're sharing something that was so personal within your life. I think that's why, as you spoke about reaching out for help, just telling one person, whether it's a random person miles like across the world, that can offer just a more comfortable and welcoming approach to how you go about your day, because you shared it with someone else and you're not just struggling with it alone, which really offers a great ability for people nowadays with this internet access and such. And I'm so happy that you spoke about self-affirmations, positive affirmations, because that's something that I truly wholeheartedly believe in as well. It changes your reality, like you were saying. It's digging into that subconscious and making that, self-belief, self-worth actually important and actually wholesome within the way that you see yourself, the way that you view yourself. Is there any other, routines or habits that you picked up as you have been on this, self-help, self-development journey that have offered, some valuable insight into, your own, emotions and thoughts other than positive affirmations that you've been able to focus on? Or is there any other hobbies that you like that have been very therapeutic other than, going to therapy and sharing your thoughts?
Yeah, so yeah, that's one thing I didn't really touch upon too much, is because I I actually did go through counseling, and the the way that I very first started to talk about all of this with another person was one of my teachers in that the program for single moms that I went through. After being there for a few years, she had gotten to know me quite well, and she sat me. We were sitting down having a talk one day, and I don't know how it came up, but she looked at me and she's like, "Lorraine, what happened to you? Like, something happened to you, and I know it really affected you." And she was able to see that in me, and she point blank asked me, like, "Were you abused? Were you raped? Like, what happened?" And I said, "Yeah, I was raped." And the fact that she was able to recognize that in me and ask me about it made it easier for me to admit what had happened. And from her recognizing that in me, she suggested counseling. And so, yes, I went through counseling. And the two books that my counselor and I used to help me work through things are called the Courage to Heal books. So those two resources are still available. I'm not sure if they're in libraries. They come available as like a sort of a textbook and an accompanying workbook. And they talk about different scenarios with people, in all these different situations. And then they'll ask you questions like, okay, so as you read through so-and-so's experience, what did you identify? Or did you identify with any of the feelings that so-and-so experienced through this? And so it just gives you really prompting questions to think about. So I worked through these books with my counselor, and then she also taught me different strategies and techniques, which I do share in my book. A lot of them are, really, here, let me just to give you an idea of some of the things that are there. So there's temporary and long-term coping strategies to use. Identify your emotions and release negativity from your life. Chapter 8, this is the one that's free on my website. Change your mindset by using positive affirmations. Chapter 9 is actually also free on my website. It's called Use Meditation, the Law of Attraction, and Visualization. And so on my website, I've actually renamed this. I just added to this this chapter title by calling it Use Meditation, the Law of Attraction, and Visualization to be more successful. So there's 3 additional strategies right there that people can use. I mean, a lot of us have heard about meditation, to help, calm our minds, find peace and all that within ourselves. The law of attraction, I think a lot of people have heard about now as well, but they might not know a lot about it. So if you read this free chapter of mine, it talks all about it, how to use visualization in your life, because it's a practice that you need to do you need to do often, and you will become better and better at it as you do it. And it's a really powerful technique that works. And my one of my very first experiences with visualization was Okay, so let me just run through the steps because I've got it up on my website. I'm just reading it right now. So the practice of visualization, you find a comfortable place where you can like sit down or lie down for about 20 minutes without being disturbed. And what you do is you do some deep breathing techniques, in and out, slowly and deeply, like 10, 20 times, and allow your mind to picture what you want out of life, out of whatever, an experience, whatever it happens to be. And then imagine that you have already gotten what you want, and let your mind evoke the different images of it. Like and use your senses to, imagine how you will feel, what you would see, what you would touch, what you would hear. Like completely build your mental scenario and imagine yourself actually living in that scenario. And then repeat this whole entire process, every day, every week, however often as you can, until you actually, make that picture your reality. And for me, one of the things, my first experience with how this visualization technique is, I've never seen a palm tree before in real life, and I've never taken my dream vacation. And one of my online friends, Ryan Biddulph, he is called the Blogger from Paradise. And what he does is he basically goes hopping from like island to island, city to city, continent to continent, living all over the globe, doing different things, whether it's house sitting, blogging, selling his ebooks, doing coaching, whatever. And he, he's like always posting pictures of these beaches, these gorgeous beaches with palm trees, and, all the different places he's been and all the different experiences he's had. And I became friends with him, and I started looking at it, all these pictures eventually were like telling me, like, Lorraine, you know what, you need to get out there and you need to start doing this for yourself, because this is, one of the things that you've always wanted to do is take your dream vacation. And so actually in 2016, I finally did take a week, and I it was, oh my goodness, one of the best weeks of my life. But I had visualized myself, on this beach with palm trees, and, and that was like my mental picture of paradise, was, lying in a hammock, on a nice sunny day, just laying back, reading a book, sipping a drink, and, going for a swim when it got too hot, and feeling, the sand between my toes. Like, I visualized every single aspect of this. And, then I started taking steps to make it come true. I applied for a passport. I started saving money, and I started taking steps so that eventually this whole thing would come true. And it's really hilarious how it all started, because I had taken my little nephew to an indoor swimming pool one day, and I was sitting in like the hot tub area, and on the wall they had a picture of a palm tree painted, and I was sitting there feeling the warmth of this water in the hot tub, and looking at this picture thinking, okay, time to start. He was off playing with, the other kids, and I was like, okay, let's do the visualization practice right now, because, you got this like inspiration. And so I started doing that, and that was like in February. And then 2 weeks later, or less than 2 weeks later, my brother had sent me a message on Facebook saying, hey, me and my girlfriend, we're going down to the Dominican Republic for a week's vacation. You want to come with us? And I was like, are you freaking kidding me? Like, here's an opportunity for me to make my life, my like dream vacation of palm trees and beaches and water and everything all come true. And so I did. I jumped at the opportunity. He was an experienced traveler. He had been there before. That I had just gotten my passport. In fact, he was my not my co-signer, but my like the person that vouches for you when so anyway, so he knew I had my passport. He knew, and I was like, wow. And so it was the best experience of my life. So visualization, this is a technique that like truly works as long as you put like the mental time and energy into it. So that is also that whole chapter is free on my website. It's all, and and it talks, like I said, it talks about the law of attraction, and other things. Now, in my book, also, there's I just wanted to, because this is where I sort of started. Chapter 10 is forming healthy habits one step at a time. Chapter 11 is improving your self-image. Then we've got alternative treatments and counseling. We've got acceptance, spirituality, and your will to change. Create your path to a happier life. Put your plan into action by setting and attaining goals. Assess your growth. Conquer procrastination. How to make your happiness last. And there, and these are just there's more, but I'm not going to list every chapter. But yeah, so I mean, there's so many different pieces of information out there that when you combine all of these strategies and techniques together, like, you're going to be unstoppable. Like, you will get to where you want to be and then surpass it, because from personal experience, like, I never ever thought I would be sitting here today, with a huge smile on my face, feeling as amazing as I do, and, running a business, doing what I love doing, working with people, helping people, and impacting people on a regular basis, changing lives. Like, it's an amazing feeling. And, whatever it is that you personally want to do, whether it's just even, getting out of a relationship that is not working for you anymore. I mean, that could be your goal. Or if it's, changing a job, finding a job where you're actually happy with. Whatever it is that you want to do to improve your life in whatever area, it's possible. You just need to believe in yourself. And if you don't have that self-belief, start using those positive affirmations. They will help you to develop that belief, because that's what positive affirmations do. They change your mindset. They change your belief system. And, and that's what trauma does. It changes your belief system, but in a negative way. Like I said, when I was 14 and being raped and all that happened to me, like, I mentioned the feelings of hopelessness, of despair, of, feeling worthless, feeling alone, feeling, so depressed that I, like, couldn't even get out of bed and have a shower. I mean, just having a shower one day was a huge accomplishment for me. So, like, you don't need to do all these, like, huge, amazing things. You just, like, one goal of even just getting out of bed and getting dressed for the day, or even, spending 5 minutes outside. That could be your goal, where you can just, take those baby steps. And once you start taking those baby steps, all of those baby steps will add up. And over time, you will get to where you want to go. I mean, it's just like losing weight. Like, somebody who wants to lose 50 pounds is not going to just boom, instantly lose 50 pounds. Like, you wake up the next day and you're 50 pounds lighter. Like, you got to work for it. It's going to take time, like, it might take you a year, like, and I know, because I've lost weight before. I know how long it takes. I know what a struggle it is. And I mean, that's something that I still currently struggle with, and probably will for the rest of my life. So, even though maybe, like, I sound like my life is all roses and peaches right now, there's still things that I struggle with. My weight's one of them. And, so, I mean, life is never perfect, and there's never the perfect time to do something. It's just do it now, take action, take those baby steps, and just keep moving forward. That's all it is. That's all life is really all about for anyone, really, when you
Definitely.
think about it.
Yeah, I love that advice. I think you touched on definitely some valuable insights that you really brought into the awareness of the mindset that you need to have throughout, facing these challenges. It's, you have to take the baby steps. You can't change your life overnight. A traumatic experience takes days, weeks to really start to, develop your own self and move through what you face. So it's an ongoing battle, whether you face a traumatic experience, or you're facing a mental health condition, or you're facing a substance abuse problem. They're all problems that we need to, face and work on every single day. It's all an ongoing process. And that's something that I think needs to become aware that, it's as simple as, like you were saying, taking a shower, getting ready for the day. Just
Yeah.
doing a simple task will change the way that your whole day goes and the way that you may make tomorrow even better. So it's all about that progression, and it's not all going to incline positively throughout. You may have some bad days, but it's all about working through that, and really, each day you have to say to yourself, have those intentions, those goals of, this is what I'm going to do today. This is one goal that I may reach, and that can provide some value and some, structure within how you try to overcome a lot of what you face. I Is there anything?
Yeah, yeah, no, I completely agree. Like with when it comes to setting goals for yourself, like I can remember those days of depression where I literally stayed in bed all day, watching TV, didn't get dressed, just got up to eat, to go to the bathroom, and that was it. And like I was just existing at that point. I wasn't living. And in those in that period of time, it was like, I did whatever I had to do for my son, got him ready for school, made him his lunch, blah blah blah, whatever. But for me it was like, okay, I don't want to do anything. I had no motivation. It was like literally taking a shower. If I accomplished that during the day, that was a huge milestone. And so it's over time, when you set your goals, like, even though how you're going to feel afterwards, like, you take a shower, you automatically feel better. You feel better about yourself because you're clean, you're up, you're moving around, you got the blood flowing through your body. And it's just like one step closer to where you should be. Right. And now I take a look at my goals that I have, and my goals have changed drastically over the years. And my goals, I just did a whole huge revision of my goals last week, and I have 7 big ones, and they're big, and they're going to take time. Like, one of them is to write, a series of books about my life. Well, do you think I'm going to do that by tomorrow? No. Do you think maybe by next year? Possibly. I mean, it's going to take literally like time to work on that. So the thing that you have to remember is just one day at a time. Just like Brendan said, whatever it is, whether it's your substance abuse that you're dealing with, or your depression, or whatever it happens to be, your traumatic event, yes, you just deal with things as they come, one day at a time. Because honestly, we only have this moment in time. We only have today. We're not guaranteed tomorrow. We're not guaranteed next week. We are guaranteed this moment in time, and it's this moment that you have to make the best of it. And it took me a long time to realize that yes, like, the time is now, the moment is now. I had a near-death experience about, what were we in, 2019? No, it was 2012, so 7 years ago. And that's what actually prompted me to start making changes in my life. What happened is my appendix burst, and I was literally dying. And I was in the hospital, and I had, called an ambulance, and I was talking to these doctors, and they're like, well, we might be able to send you home with antibiotics, or we could operate, we're not exactly sure what's going on. I'm like, okay, well, like, get sure, because like, I feel horrible. Like, I'm in so much pain. Like, I felt that I was dying. And as it turned out, I literally was. I had an infection. My appendix burst into, I don't know how many pieces. The doctor said she had to go digging around, for all of them. And normally for, when you get your appendix removed, they just do it through like laparoscopy, where they just insert the 2 little holes in the things. And they had to cut me open. They had to like look around for, like, it was just a massive undergoing. And during that hospital stay, I realized I wasn't ready to die. Despite having suicidal thoughts for years, and wanting to like end all my pain and end my life and end everything, it wasn't my life that I wanted to end. It was my pain. And once I realized that, it was like, it was a huge eye opener for me, because it's like, I just want my problems to end. I want my pain to end. And how can I make that happen now? How do I do that? And I ended up reconnecting with my son, and that just started the ball of positivity rolling, and it was like, I went from the state of like constant depression to realizing, oh, I actually want to live, and I want to achieve some of my dreams and goals. And, like one of them was becoming an author. Another one was, working in the writing field, because that's like my passion is words. And that's what I'm doing now. So that's what I did. I started, learning about becoming an author. And the really cool thing is nowadays, anybody can become an author, because there's a thing called self-publishing. And you can like go up on Amazon, create an account, upload some files, and boom, you're an author and you're selling stuff on Amazon. And it's like, oh my God, like this is so cool. And that's why I love technology, because it's allowing us to do things that never before were possible. And so, so now I help other people become authors, because the whole process, yes, it's a little, there's a lot of steps to it, but it's not hard. It's just kind of hard to figure out on your own. And so I did that, and I invested the time, because that's one of my goals, was to become an author. And so I went through all of the steps. I mastered every step of the way, with, the formatting of the Word files, figuring out the cover version, working with cover designers, figuring out the kind of files that Amazon wants, because they're super picky. They want a doc file of this, but a PDF of this, and, and everything else. And it's just like, it's easy to go through all these steps, but it's hard when you don't know how. And so that's why I added that service to my business, helping other people become authors. So it's just, now I'm doing what I love in like so many different areas. And it's, everybody can do that. Everybody can do what they want. Like, you just have to, like believe in yourself. And if you don't believe in yourself, that's where the positive affirmations come in. They will help you develop that belief. Like, I know I'm repeating myself, but it's so important to try and like get this to stick in people's heads. Like, all these people who are listening right now, you can do this. You can do whatever you want to. I don't know if you've been told this before or not, by somebody, by your parents, by anybody, but you know what? Yes, you can. I am here to tell you that you can. And I know this because I'm living proof. I am proof that you can. So on that note, I just, I sincerely hope that you take one step. And if you don't know who to reach out to, hell, reach out to me. I'm everywhere on social media. Lorraine Reguly. I'm everywhere. Wordingwell.com is my website. Like, send me a message. Send me an email. Say, hey, heard your podcast. I don't know where to begin, and I'll help you.
Wonderful, Lorraine. We'll make sure to have all those links within the show notes to make sure everybody can get in contact with you and see more about the resources that you have. Before we go, I have one last question that I really love to ask my guests, and you'll love it since you enjoy writing and implementing words in, your own experiences. So my last question I really like to ask is, if you're going to be representing your book within a whole life story, so if you're writing chapters about each phase, each different lesson that you have throughout your past year or two, what you've been, uncovering and learning throughout this time frame, throughout, the recent time that you've been developing yourself and improving yourself, what would that chapter be called within your whole experience throughout your life? And give us a little glimpse as to why you are experiencing that currently.
So for me personally, within the last 2 years, I have made a decision in terms of my business, which has carried over to other aspects of my life, right? Because when you work, your work affects other areas of your life. So I have focused more on editing than writing, because I love helping other people, number one. And number two, I love helping other people learn better English. and I love helping them improve their words. So uh, change is constant might be one of the title, would be an appropriate title for like the last couple of years of my book, is because we're always changing. Like if it's one thing that stays constant in our life, it's the change. I know it sounds paradoxical, but it's so true, because really we live in a world that's ever evolving, ever changing. And, we are often resistant to change, especially as we get older. We kind of like, quote unquote, get stuck in our ways, and we just don't want to hear about another way of doing something. We think our way is the best way. And, but one thing that I have, or maybe embrace change, that might be a more positive, title, because change is something that it should be embraced, because there's easier and better ways of doing things. And sometimes it just takes someone else to help you out. And I know for me, like my son, I mean, he is constantly, taught, like when it comes to technology or my phone or anything, he's like, Mom, your phone can do this, right? You can do this. There's an app for that. Mom, you can do this. And it's like, oh, okay, show me how. And then let me see if it's something that I can, something that'll work for me, right? And, because I have my own little methods and ways of doing things. And then he'll take a look and he'll be like, well, why don't you do it this way? It's so much easier. Or why don't you do it this way? Like there's one extra step, but you know what? It's going to be more effective. And it's like, oh, okay, I'm open-minded. I'll consider it. And so, there's, embracing different changes in your life. I mean, that's embracing change would be probably the title I would go with.
Awesome. I love it, Lorraine. I thank you so much for answering that and just providing all the insight that you did throughout this interview. I think we touched on a lot of great topics and shared a lot of different experiences and ways that people connect with your story, and they can connect with you to learn more and see which ways they can help really face a lot of the obstacles within their own life and learn to better themselves and see that there is hope, there is belief, there is change that they can make within their life. And I think that's what you provided today. You really offered a great perspective into such a positive story, such a positive outcome from something that was all directed based on, one traumatic experience. From one thing can lead to another. And, it's when we're able to really get in there and face the problem and offer the resources is really when we can create that change. And hopefully through your own experiences, through a lot of people that are doing research and studies within, traumatic experiences, through mental health, substance abuse, we can start helping people at an earlier age, right when they experience these issues. So we don't have a big downward spiral and we're helping them 30 years later.
Exactly.
Right away, help them right after their cause, and provide them the support structure that they need in order to build a new, sustainable, healthy, happy lifestyle and a way for them to move forward within their life. So I really thank you for offering, that hope and belief for people out there. And, I'm really looking forward to.
It's my pleasure. My pleasure is, I mean, even if I help one person, it makes everything worth it.
That's why this is incredible. It's like you're talking about, the free resource and everything. It offers so much value to everybody out there. And just you sharing your story, just you speaking about something that you faced changes so many lives. Once they read that, like you were saying, you had 500 people all the time reading your story and connecting with you. And that in and of itself is so beautiful.
Yeah. And I love hearing from people, so I really encourage people to, even if, you just want to say hi, like just come and say hi to me. Cause I honestly love hearing from people and just knowing that, somebody heard my voice, somebody, listened to, like I touched somebody in some way, even just to say, hey, how's it going? make a new friend or a new connection or whatever. Like, that's one of the best things that I love about blogging, that I really miss about being a teacher in the classroom, is because like on a daily basis back then, I was in contact with like, literally hundreds of people, like 30 plus students per class, and like over 100 people a day I encountered. And now, working from home and working online, it's like I don't have that physical connection with people anymore. So I have to rely on the social connection through, social media and emails, and, yes, sometimes phone calls, or, podcasts, or, Skype calls or whatever. But I love hearing from people. And the most amazing part to me is like hearing that I helped somebody. Like when I get emails from people saying, "Hey, Lorraine, like I listened to your podcast, and and I started using these affirmations, and they like so changed my life, and now I'm doing this," and it's like, holy smokes, like that's awesome, and or I used to, from that blog post about my suicide attempt, I would get emails saying, "Hey, Lorraine, you know what? I was feeling really down and I almost killed myself, and I read your story, and I listened, and like you saved my life." And it's like, whoa, like I never imagined in a million years that I would ever impact somebody else to the point that like it was literally life changing. And that's when I realized, what, there's so much I have in me to share with other people. And if I can help, even, one more person, it makes all of the crap and all of the suffering I went through worth it, because it's helping someone else. And then they in turn eventually will help someone else. And it just keeps, forward and forward and forward. And so, and that's what I love about podcasts, because, I've shared this on other podcasts. I've shared my exact same story, my exact same tips, everything. But, with different audiences. And now, I'm able to reach your audience. And so thank you so very much, Brendan, for having me on your podcast. Like it really, like, it means so much to me, and I thank you from the bottom of my heart for letting me share with your audience. I appreciate
You're
it.
so welcome, Lorraine. It was such a pleasure to interview you, and I hope and I know that my audience is going to love the insights that you brought, and they're going to connect very well with what you experienced and how they can move forward. So thank you again, and I thank you all for listening to another episode of the Mental Insights podcast.